WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
There are some guests that we have from time to time, Dennis, that I truly cannot get enough of the questions out in time because there's just so much to learn. And I have to tell you, our next guest is definitely one of those.
Yeah, it's one where, we have him on because Benny and I do podcast and we're looking at how can we grow this podcast, make it more beneficial to our listeners.
Mhm.
And Chris is an expert in podcasting. And so a lot of this is for you to hear, but also Benny and I are going to be taking in a lot on this podcast because there's just a lot of good content that helps us figure out how to make the podcast even more robust and knowing that podcasts are about community. How do you make that community grow?
So Chris Costilla is one of the partners at Evergreen Digitized, and they're a brand development partner. They do some really creative and interesting things. And I tell you, we get approached by a lot of different folks to be on the podcast, and there are some varying levels of expertise in that world. But I have to tell you, I hung on to every word that Chris was talking about, and this is some really good stuff for anybody out there who is thinking about starting a podcast or doing a YouTube channel. You're definitely going to get some information on this one. I think, Dennis, this is probably a fantastic listen for anybody who really wants to learn and take that next step. So let's have a listen. Dennis, I think back. Gosh, was it 5 years now during COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we started this podcast. If for anyone who doesn't know, Dennis and I just were chatting, and Dennis and I have been friends for a couple decades now, and we would just connect up and just have these long conversations, and we just said, "Hey, this would be a great idea. Just throw a microphone in some of this stuff because we're talking about stuff. We were trying to grow our businesses and do all kinds of things. We're all in lockdown and whatnot, and so we came up with the idea of this podcast, really without much of a business plan. And the idea was just to kind of put our stuff out there and to talk to some interesting folks and learn as much as we could. And here we are, like we said, almost 5 years later, and I don't know what episode this is, 100 and something, right? But,
Yeah,
it's
146. So
yeah,
we've done a few.
and, we've talked to so many interesting people, but when it comes to actually putting some emphasis and really trying to move on to that next level, Dennis and I have really kind of had a lot of discussions in terms of what that's going to look like. And so Dennis had this great idea after meeting somebody who is an expert in this field to really bring him in and said, let's talk to Chris. And Chris, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, no problem, Benny. I'd like to call myself a practitioner.
There you
Okay.
go.
There's so much, nooks and crannies into it that I haven't yet discovered. And the podcasting space is always just evolving.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same as it was 6 months ago. Definitely
Mm.
wasn't the same that it was 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, it's
Oh,
radically changed. I mean, you think back, in November through the election process. I mean, it looks like podcasts were one of the ways the candidates got their message out versus the old news media and stuff.
oh
And
yeah.
Benny, as you and I were talking, I started also mainly for my clients because a lot of them would call and ask me, hey, who can help me with marketing? Who can help me with attorney stuff? Who can help me with accounting? And we just started thinking, hey, let's have those people on as guests and let them talk about how they help people and what they do. And, again, we make sure that these podcasts are not salesy, but we identify a problem and then just let the guest talk through those problems and how they might be able to help them or at least
Mhm.
open their eyes to ways to attack whatever that challenge is they're facing. And so, to your point, Chris and I had a conversation. We're, right now we only do audio. And one of our goals is to move to video. And that's where we're talking to Chris. And it's like, hey, let's have Chris on. This can be a share with our listeners, but also for Benny and I to learn a lot of stuff around what are the great ways to do podcasts? What are the things that if you're just starting out, you ought to know? What are things that you've been doing for 5 years that we ought to do? How do we reach more listeners? All that kind of stuff that everybody wants, and you hear all the great stories on podcasts that, I've got 10 million listeners. It's like, okay, how'd they get 10 million listeners? That kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
Chris, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So if I could throw this out, Chris, is the first thing, like Dennis said, we're audio only. And, we've got a nice base of folks here who listen to us. But we realize, and in just doing some of the research, that really getting to that video segment is really kind of skyrocketed a lot of people. People who had just kind of been kind of flat for a number of years suddenly go on YouTube and they've got this amazing audience. What are some reasons or your thoughts behind that? I mean, is just audio only just kind of a dead format, or do you think that it's part of the whole process?
I think it's part of the whole process. It's an and, you know,
Yeah.
why segregate yourself to one or the other?
Mm.
I like that you guys actually started audio first. It draws this intimacy in your audience that they actually get to know you and understand who you are and from what perspective. Um, but adding in video is the easiest way to leverage your podcast as a distribution machine. And currently, the way that you're uploading, you may just upload your original audio file and post it, right?
Mhm.
So 20, 25 minutes, post it. You could clap your hands and you're done. Process is complete. We successfully launched the audio podcast. Maybe make a thumbnail, put together your copy, and you're fine. You're great.
Right.
Working into it, then adding this element of video. Well, what video does is allows you to get distribution across multiple other platforms. So with just audio, you're limited to Google, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then, there's all those other platforms, too
Mhm.
much to name. But
Yeah.
YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, those are all other distribution platforms that will find the audience that you're looking for. It's playing into how they play. They try to find the correct audience for you. I especially like YouTube. YouTube allows you to post your long form video podcast. So now that your audience could make really good realizations with now your facial expressions, the way you talk, gives them a little bit more to grab onto behind the personality of the podcasters.
I've actually had people reach out to me on LinkedIn, Dennis, and say, "Oh, that's what you look like."
Exactly, exactly.
No, I didn't
There may be
expect
there
you to
may be
look
a reason we don't want you guys to see what we like.
I got a face for podcasting, right? So, well, no, that's it's really interesting. I mean, in terms of the medium, and I just kind of think about my behavior. I'm a big YouTube watcher. YouTube has become one of the biggest teachers for me in the last several years. Right? I was talking to somebody about how YouTube has saved me thousands of dollars. I have this washer and dryer. I don't know if I ever told you this story, Dennis, but I have this washer and dryer, right? And it worked fine for the first few years. And then all of a sudden, this dryer started acting weird on me. And so through YouTube, was able to figure out how to fix my dryer,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I figure for every call that I've had and I've been able to fix it, I'm going to make this damn washer a dryer last for like 20 years is kind of my goal. But I find myself kind of drawn, whether it be the topic of technology, telecommunications, how to run a business, and of course AI. YouTube is my default. I don't really search for podcasts to be able to do that. And it's like the old, just kind of search for a topic. And so, Chris, I mean, obviously from that mechanism, YouTube and like you said, TikTok, Insta, all these type of platforms, we're really missing out by not having that. We're really, I don't want to say hurting our brand, but it's stunting the growth ability for WFH with two guys to really kind of get to where we want to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a search engine, and you said it best. How to?
Mhm.
You ever go into YouTube search bar and just type in "how to," and then you just see it populate?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a search engine, and a lot of people use YouTube for education. I have a YouTube degree in a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Other times, cars, right? I
Well, I'm gonna
like to
start putting that in my
tinker and
credentials.
mess
I've been
around with
YouTube
cars.
trained by.
But there's great teachers on there,
Oh,
Yeah.
there
right?
are.
Mm.
I
If
mean,
they if that teacher or the person who created the video connects with your type of persona,
Yeah.
you could really start to learn and benefit a lot from that. The
Mhm.
video aspect makes it visual. So there's always the visual component to learning as well. Learning just through audio might be a little harder than with the visual stimulus as
True.
well.
exactly. And if you put the closed caption, you can also be doing stuff and still kind of watching that. We've been watching Netflix this week, and my daughter put closed caption on. We can't figure out how to get it off, and now I'm hooked with closed caption because it's like you can actually read and understand what they're saying. Because half the time I'm busy doing other stuff, and it's like, oh, that's what they said. So there's some positive there. Also, I was going to plug, for the listeners that are listening in, if you don't know Benny also talks with his hands. So with videos, you're going to see his expressions and his emotions and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I'm
It'll
not Italian, but for some reason I should be, I guess. I
yeah.
don't know. Well, so one of the things, Chris, that we've been hesitant about, or just like, we talked about this a couple years ago, and YouTube obviously came into that, but it's a whole different format, right? We have to kind of we have to think differently, and I'll be candid. If you look at me right now, I'm honest, I'm wearing shorts and a hoodie, right? And in the back, my back walls are pretty plain. You might be able to see a screen back there, but it's a different type of environment we have to plan for and think about, and even having like text overlays on the screen, and for us being able to look at the cameras when we're doing this. I'll sit there and I'll be writing notes as you're talking because I think I'm really into it, and then no one wants to see the top of my head, but it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, there's two modems of thinking, right? For me, as a connoisseur of podcast, I'm not actually watching them, but it is nice to glance over and see the genuine interactions.
Yeah.
Right.
'Cause typically, I'm doing something in the background. I can't commit to just watching two people on a screen for an hour and a half, right? Or even for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Still being able to pop open the picture and just set it down, I really enjoy just doing that.
Yeah.
So on that end, it's not something you have to rush into. You don't have to make it a full production if you don't want to. Cool thing with YouTube, it's actually a packaging platform. As well as you package the content inside, and what I mean by that is you have your thumbnail, you have your title, and then you have the media itself. All three of those combined is what pushes out YouTube. So if your thumbnail is bad and the content's great, they're probably not going to click it. If your title isn't what's actually in the content, excuse me, if your title's not actually what's the context of the video, you're just confusing people. So as well as you could package it, the greater it's going to perform and you'll get that reach that you're desiring. You could package it as, hey, we're just two working guys. You're going to see a blank wall, but that's what makes this podcast this podcast.
Yeah.
We're having genuine conversations.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
not overly produced.
especially with the title "Working from Home," it's like, okay, it's going to be the background of home. I'm not going to make it some business looking type of background. I think it's showing that, hey, you can do these things remotely and all that kind of thing. And I think that's what, you know, the last 2 weeks I've been on some other people's podcasts, and theirs is video. And I asked the question, "Hey, is my background okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's great." It's like, the key thing, Vinny, I did have to take a shower this morning because I was on one before we did this one that was a video. And my wife's like, "You need to wash your hair." It's like, you were mowing yesterday and you didn't take a shower last night. Um, so it's like, okay, it does cause us to change a little bit. Um, but I think, to your point, is keep it natural and just be who you are and not try, that's what makes it authentic is you're not trying to be someone that you're not.
Yeah. It's
So,
it's really.
so, so Chris, as people get into, a lot of people, they want to create, they're going to have all these followers, first off, how do they track the followers and what do they do on that? And then how do you grow those networks of people that do follow or listen in? What have you found to work?
First question on the tracking the data part, well, you have to accrue the data, right? So, and then when we're looking into data, there's this new lens that I like to look through. When you're looking at graphs and charts, well, your data is only as good as how long the period of the duration of what you're looking at. So if we post this podcast and we start monitoring the podcast data the same day or the next day, it's not really true, accurate data.
Right.
So a healthy span for someone starting out new or who's pushing a new campaign, will let the campaign roll 3, 6, 12 months if you have to, if you're starting out new. The goal is to get the repetitions in. You'll learn a lot through the repetitions than you will through the data. The data is after that long payoff window, but you still have to keep on chipping away at it. You're laying down a foundation of, brand recognition. They want to understand what it is you guys stand for, what type of conversations they're going to have, and what they could expect. To grow the audience, let's say we're getting past that data, right? Now we're in the weeds. We want to start building block by block. Okay, well then how does that happen? Anytime you're messing with data, there's certain procedures that you're going to go through. I, monitor them through systems, but for me, it's brand structure, understanding your North Star, where it is you're trying to go. And that way if you go to scale and build out teams, or if you have anyone helping, it just makes it so ironclad that everyone understands what's going on. Let's talk from a scaled down version. We have the brand structure, we have ideation. Hey, Chris, you know this. Let's go ahead and talk about these topics today, right? We sort of ideated the podcast already. Next up is pre production. We hopped in a call. We were able to understand what it is we're going inside to do, as well as the layout of the podcast and, sort of how the ins and outs work. That way we're both on the same page again. And from there it goes to production. Us recording this right now is the production. And it looks different for everyone. Everyone has their own style to it, their own templates that they use. From there is post-production. After you get this back, well, maybe you guys might strip the video right now and just use the audio. But that is the post-production process. We'll take the intro, stack the intro. That's the editing. Then from there is the distribution. Where is it going to go? Some people, if they're only using audio, they like to use Buzzsprout, a third party that could get it out everywhere. They just upload it once and it publishes it itself. The last step is data, but you have to run the first 5 systems quite a bit of times to then go into the data spree, because you don't want to be too overly analytical and have that move your brand's presence is just solely off the data, sort of leaving behind the soul of everything, trying to chase numbers. So an important question I have with a lot of people is, okay, well, you want to grow. What is the important metric of what you want to grow? Certain numbers deal with certain things. If we're paying attention a lot to the reach, well, if we have low reach, that's justified. You want a little bit bigger reach. You're already hitting 10, 20, 30,000 listeners and you want even more. Why? Why isn't that crowd enough that you feel like you still need to continuously push? Online, there's campaigns. If you ever ran ads, there's certain selections that you could hit determining what you want the campaign to produce. Some people want reach, some people want conversions, some people want website clicks.
Yeah.
And then it starts turning into, okay, well, the podcasting is a mechanism. What is it plugged into?
No, this is good. This is good. So another question that I've heard from other people too is, hey, have you monetized your podcast? What does that mean to people? So, I mean, is that getting sponsors? What's that mean?
Yeah, monetization. That is the tricky one. Probably the one people most likely pay a lot of attention to is like, okay, well, how do I monetize this? I'm going to put in all this work. How am I going to get the money back out of it? Throughout my time and understanding being a practitioner, the best way to monetize it is already having an existing business in the background.
Yeah.
You're taking that audience and going down a funnel to get them to convert on the other side. It's a lot faster and easier because you've built out the back end of your business to allow those type of qualified leads to come through. Now, if you don't have a business, we're sort of in the game, right? Okay, it gets a little bit trickier if you don't have a business in the background. With the business, immediately you get one qualified lead and you close it, you have business and you've monetized.
Right.
It's as good as how strong your systems are. Now, if we don't have that, we sort of have to understand what these platforms are and how they work. What is YouTube? What is Facebook Meta now? And how do they work? They sell ads. If you think back to a traditional business, well, how do they create revenue? It's not by us just watching for free all the time. If you don't have YouTube Premium or YouTube Red, you watch ads.
Right.
Well, those ad buyers are spending money on their platform. What makes you valuable to these platforms is your audience and your reach. How targeted is your audience? How much reach do you have? So our ad buyers could place ads on your specific audience and reach the audience that they want. So the name of the game now is, right, we maybe need more content. We need to get more things published and distributed so we could stack our audience and our members. Then from there, right, you could have AdSense that comes in as a residual. Then you could have affiliates, brand deals. That one is my favorite because if you are businessly inclined, you can negotiate for better terms. Or you could push your own product. If your audience is matured and you've had it for a while and you see that there's a gap, a product or anything that you could make, go ahead and make a digital product and sell it. There's multiple routes of monetization and you can get pretty creative with it.
Chris, obviously, this is a topic that there's so much and there's such rich stuff that you've given us today. But is there anything else in terms of that you think would be helpful for our audience members to listen to? Anything that would be helpful for them at all?
Yeah, for anyone, if you do have a business and that is your monetization route, there's some psychology that you have to understand of why we're producing so much content and why you have to produce almost daily. You have to get those reps in because there is a process to getting these strangers to know and trust your brand. It's timeless marketing principles, but I'll break it down. I call it stranger to superfan. But you want awareness content, consideration, awareness, discovery, consideration, conversion, relationship, and retention. All these are all kinds of videos, right? We use the shorts to get a broad outreach. What if they grab on that one short and they want to see what else is there? That's why you want to have amassed a library of content that they could then go in and stalk your page to get to understand you. They build an affiliate through binging your content to the point where if you do ask, hey, if you do need accounting or bookwork services, make your way down to my website. They trust you at that point, and then you could convert at the end. That's why it's important to get out so much content is to build up that library so they could go through those stages.
This is such I've learned so much on this one, and I know Dennis with the nodding, and if we had video, you'd be able to see Dennis was nodding on this one. But I think there's so much here, Chris, and we definitely want to have you back. But I know there are going to be some folks out there who have a lot of questions for you. They might want to know this for their own business. Chris, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, guys, I'm showing all the behind the scenes and how I'm building, how I'm working with the clients, conversations that we have. It's all on my social media pages. The easiest way to find me is by my name, Chris Costilla. I'm on all platforms. LinkedIn, I might have to update, but majority of the process is already out there.
Great.
Chris, we appreciate you stopping by today. I definitely have learned quite a bit, and I find this to be super valuable. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we're going to have you back. Okay?
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
again, Chris. We appreciate it.
Well, Dennis, that's another podcast in the can. I know that a lot of you all want to know how to get in touch with us. Dennis, what's the best way for folks to be able to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email's by far the best for me. It's Dennis J, so DENNISJ at worksolution.com. And that's WORX solution, no S at the end, so solution.com. Benny, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. Get a hold of me. My email address is benny@velocitytechnology.group. That's BENNY at velocitytechnology.group. Also, for me and Dennis, you can find us on LinkedIn. Look for us on LinkedIn. Our Work From Home with Two Guys is on LinkedIn. And we also have a website, WFH2guys.com. Look us up. You'll find all the past episodes and some little bits of information that maybe we don't get a chance to talk to on the podcast. We put it out there too as well.
And definitely share us with your friends and people in your network.
Absolutely. Let us know what we can do to make this podcast your podcast. Give us some ideas. And if you'd like to be a guest, let us know. We'll talk to you guys soon.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.